In what may be one of the most direct geopolitical interventions Beijing has made in the Western Hemisphere this year, Chinese cargo ships have docked at Havana port, while the United States maintains a crippling blockade on the island. Cuba is running out of fuel. Its grid is collapsing. Blackouts have spread across more than half the country, and at the moment, Washington is treating the island as a failed state. Trump's own words, China has stepped in with a delivery that Cuba's government is calling a lifeline. President Miguel Diaz-Canel confirmed the arrival of the first shipment from an expected Chinese donation of nearly 60,000 tons of rice, with 15,000 tons reaching Havana on Saturday. He thanked Beijing publicly and used the moment to send a message that went far beyond gratitude. The cherished bonds of friendship and cooperation that unite us grow stronger in these crucial times, he said. That is not a thank you note. That is an alignment statement made 90 miles from the United States, while American sanctions are choking the island's economy, and an aircraft carrier sits in nearby waters.
The White House won't be a very secure place.
But then regarding Cuba, there was an aircraft carrier that just arrived there this week, a Nimitz aircraft carrier. Are you sending that there to intimidate the Cuban government?
No, not at all. The Cuba, look, it's a failed country. Everybody knows it. They don't have electricity. They don't have money. They don't have really anything. They don't have food. And we're going to help them along, and we're going to help them because number one, I want to help them. I don't want to on a humanitarian basis, but we have the Cuban American population, much of it living in Miami and Florida. That's a great group of people, amazing group of people, industrious, they're great Americans. They've wanted this to happen. They want to go back to their country. They want to help their country. I hope they're going to stay here, but they want to go back. They want to invest in their country and, see if they can bring it back. Other presidents have looked at this for 50, 60 years doing something, and it looks like I'll be the one that does it, so we'd be happy to do it. We want to open it up to Cuban Americans where they can go back and help.
The energy crisis on the island has reached a critical point. Cuba depends heavily on imported fuel, and the squeeze on those imports has pushed the island deeper into crisis. The fuel squeeze intensified after Washington moved against Venezuela earlier this year and then turned more directly against Cuba's energy lifeline. Trump's policy was to choke off fuel flows to Cuba and pressure any country helping sustain them. By early this year, Washington had escalated its Cuba pressure campaign to the point of treating the island as a direct national security issue while warning off suppliers. Reuters reported that a major Russian oil shipment provided only temporary relief after the U.S. squeeze cut off much of Cuba's fuel access. Earlier this month, Cuba's energy minister admitted the island had exhausted its oil supplies. The result has been deep blackouts across the island, with Reuters reporting outages of up to 22 hours a day in parts of Havana as the grid entered a critical state. The rice shipment is not Beijing's first intervention. China has also been deepening its economic support for Cuba, reinforcing the image of Beijing as a fallback partner while Washington tightens pressure. The combination of food aid and energy infrastructure tells a story about the kind of relationship China is building with Havana. It is not military, it is logistical. It addresses the two things Cuba needs most urgently, fuel and food, and it does so through channels the United States cannot easily block. A rice shipment on a cargo vessel does not violate international law. Solar panels are not weapons. And by providing both, Beijing is positioning itself as the partner that keeps Cuba functioning while Washington tries to make it collapse. President Trump was asked about Cuba before departing for China. His response was blunt. He called Cuba a failed nation and said the United States would talk about Cuba at the right time. Trump also rejected the idea that U.S. military moves near Cuba were meant as intimidation. Washington has framed its approach as support for the Cuban people while linking relief to political change and outside channels of delivery. The framing was humanitarian, but the tools being used, sanctions, an oil blockade, an aircraft carrier offshore, and a criminal indictment against a former Cuban leader do not look like humanitarian assistance. They look like a pressure campaign designed to produce a political outcome.
I'm not going to comment on military matters or national security threats directly linked to the United States in specificity. Here's what I can tell you. Cuba not only has weapons that they've acquired from Russia and China over the years, but they also host Russia and Chinese intelligence presence in their country, not far from where we're standing right now. So Cuba has always posed a national security threat to the United States. They, by the way, have been one of the leading sponsors of terrorism. And
What Cuba is experiencing is not just sanctions in the traditional sense. It is an oil blockade, a food crisis, an energy collapse, and a political pressure campaign running simultaneously. Trump signed an executive order labeling Cuba an extraordinary threat. The administration escalated legal and criminal pressure linked to the 1996 shoot-down case, adding to fears that Washington is trying to force political change in Havana. And Rubio publicly declared Cuba a national security threat while referencing Russian and Chinese intelligence operations on the island. The accumulation of pressure is designed to produce a single outcome: a change in leadership. Diaz-Canel has refused. And with Chinese rice arriving in Havana while much of the country endures severe blackouts, Cuba is making its own calculation about which superpower it trusts to keep it alive.
I'm not going to comment on military matters or national security threats directly linked to the United States in specificity. Here's what I can tell you. Cuba not only has weapons that they've acquired from Russia and China over the years, but they also host Russia and Chinese intelligence presence in their country, not far from where we're standing right now. So Cuba has always posed a national security threat to the United States. They, by the way, have been one of the leading sponsors of terrorism in the entire... Our preference in Cuba and anywhere in the world is a negotiated diplomatic settlement, okay? And that's what I would say to you. The president always has the option to do whatever it takes to support and protect the national interest and national security of the United States. He has the option to do that if there's a threat to the national security of the United States. And he has shown his willingness to do that when he identifies such a threat. That said, our preference is always a diplomatic solution, always, and you know, a negotiated agreement. That's always our preference. But to answer your question, if there's a threat to the national security of the United States, the president not just has the right, he has the obligation to address that national security threat. Well, that was a grand jury in South Florida returned an indictment on Raul Castro. It had nothing to do with us. It's a grand jury. The evidence is clear. He admits to it. Raul Castro openly admits and brags about he shot down gave the order to shoot down civilian airplanes.
And how would you get him here?
Well, I'm not going to talk about how we're going to get him here. If we were trying to get him here, why would I say to the media what our plans are about that? I know you have to ask, but why would I answer that? The bottom line, there's a lot. At that point, he becomes a fugitive of American justice. And, well, you know, if there's an announcement, we'll tell you afterwards, not before.
So this is the picture. China is sending 60,000 tons of rice to Cuba. The first 15,000 tons arrived Saturday. Beijing has also sent solar panels. Cuba's oil supply has been effectively cut off since January. Only one Russian tanker has reached the island in 4 months. Blackouts are covering more than half the country. The United States has an aircraft carrier near Cuban waters, an indictment against a former president, and a Secretary of State who calls the island a national security threat. Cuba says it is not a threat and accuses Washington of collective punishment. And in the middle of it all, Diaz-Canel said the bonds with China grow stronger in these crucial times. The pressure is American. The newest visible lifeline is Chinese. And Cuba has made it clear which direction it is facing. Subscribe to WLA for daily geopolitical analysis.